Chosen one, Archangel Michael wants you to hear this carefully. The wealthy version of you is not someone you become years from now. It is not a distant future, and it is not a dream that keeps moving further away every time you reach for it. Michael says that version of you already exists. The real question is not whether abundance is coming into your life. The real question is, what has been preventing you from stepping into it? Because right before a major shift happens, life often looks completely different from what you expected. The waiting gets longer, the delays become frustrating, and the uncertainty becomes louder. That is why so many people walk away from their breakthrough season without realizing how close they actually were. But if you've been feeling different lately, if the old version of your life no longer feels right, if survival mode is exhausting you, and if something deep inside keeps telling you that you were meant for more, then this message may explain exactly why. Today, Archangel Michael is revealing the hidden sign that appears when your wealthy self is ready to emerge. And before this message ends, you'll discover the one shift that separates those who stay stuck from those who finally step into the abundant life they were always meant to live. Stay with me, because what Michael is about to reveal could change the way you see your entire journey. Chosen one, Archangel Michael says there is something important you need to understand before anything else. The wealthy version of you is not being created. It is being revealed. Many people spend years believing that abundance is something they must chase. They think they need to become a completely different person before they deserve greater opportunities, greater peace, greater provision, or greater success. But Michael says this belief has kept many chosen ones trapped. Because the truth is that your future is not waiting for you to become someone else. Your future is waiting for you to recognize who you already are. For years, you have measured your life through circumstances. You looked at your bank account. You looked at your responsibilities. You looked at the delays. You looked at the closed doors. And then you used those things to decide what was possible for you. But heaven never measures you that way. Heaven measures you according to your purpose, not your current position. And there is a difference. Your current position can change overnight, but your purpose existed long before your circumstances arrived. Michael says many chosen ones become discouraged because they confuse their present season with their permanent identity. A difficult season does not mean you are destined for difficulty. A delayed season does not mean you are destined for delay. A season of limitation does not mean you are limited. It simply means there is something happening beneath the surface that you cannot fully see yet. Think about a seed. When a seed is buried beneath the ground, it appears invisible. Nothing seems to be happening. From the outside, it looks like stillness. But beneath the soil, growth has already begun. The roots are developing. The foundation is forming. Preparation is taking place. And Michael says this is exactly what has been happening in your life. You have been looking for visible movement. Heaven has been building invisible strength. You have been looking for immediate evidence. Heaven has been creating lasting stability. You have been wondering why things have taken so long. Michael says the answer is simple. Because what is coming requires a stronger foundation than you realized. There are blessings that arrive quickly and disappear just as fast. Then there are blessings that become part of your legacy. The second kind requires preparation. The second kind requires growth. The second kind requires maturity. And that is exactly what has been developing within you. Think about how much you've changed. The things that once upset you no longer control you. The fears that once dominated your thoughts no longer have the same power. The people whose opinions once determined your decisions no longer hold the same influence. That change did not happen accidentally. It happened because heaven has been shaping you. Every challenge carried a lesson. Every delay carried wisdom. Every disappointment carried preparation. Nothing was wasted. Even the moments you wanted to forget helped create the strength you now possess. Michael says one of the greatest signs that your wealthy self is emerging is that you have started valuing peace more than appearance. Years ago, you may have wanted success so people would notice you. Now you want success so you can breathe. Years ago, you wanted abundance to prove something. Now you want abundance so you can live with greater freedom and purpose. That shift matters. Because abundance that is built on proving something never lasts. But abundance built on purpose becomes sustainable. This is why your journey has looked different from many others. You were never being prepared for temporary success. You were being prepared for lasting stewardship. Michael says there is another truth you need to hear. Many chosen ones secretly fear abundance. Not because they dislike it, but because they worry it will change them. They worry they will lose themselves. They worry they will become disconnected from their values. They worry they will somehow stop being who they are. But true abundance does not erase your identity. It reveals it. Money does not create character. It amplifies character. And because heaven has been developing your character for so long, you are becoming capable of handling increase without being controlled by it. The wealthy version of you is not obsessed with possessions. The wealthy version of you is grounded, calm, focused, generous, stable, secure. And Michael says that version is already beginning to emerge. Not next year, not someday, now. Because the greatest shift always begins internally before it appears externally. And in the next part, Michael reveals the hidden reason your abundance felt delayed for so long, and why that delay may actually be the strongest evidence that your breakthrough season is closer than ever. Chosen one, Archangel Michael says the reason your abundance felt delayed is not the reason most people assume. Many people believe delay means rejection. They believe that if something takes longer than expected, it must not be meant for them. But Michael says heaven does not measure time the way human beings do. What feels like a delay to you is often preparation from a higher perspective. And there is something important you need to understand. Not every closed door is a loss. Not every pause is a punishment. Not every season of waiting is a setback. Sometimes what feels like resistance is actually protection. Think back over your journey. There were opportunities you desperately wanted. There were plans you were convinced would work. There were situations you prayed would happen. And when they didn't, you felt disappointed. You questioned yourself. You questioned your timing. You may have even questioned whether you heard heaven correctly. But Michael says if you could see the full picture, you would realize that many of those disappointments were actually acts of divine protection. Because not every opportunity was connected to your purpose. Not every open door was meant to be walked through. Not every invitation was aligned with your assignment. You only saw what was in front of you. Heaven saw where that path would eventually lead. And because heaven could see farther, certain things had to be delayed. Certain things had to be removed. Certain things had to be redirected. At the time, it felt frustrating. Now Michael wants you to see it differently. What if those delays saved you from years of struggle? What if those closed doors prevented greater pain? What if the opportunities that disappeared were never designed to carry the future you were meant to have? These questions matter because they change the way you view your past. Instead of seeing failure, you begin to see guidance. Instead of seeing rejection, you begin to see redirection. Instead of seeing low SS, you begin to see preparation. And preparation has been happening in your life for much longer than you realize. Michael says one of the biggest reasons wealth has felt distant is because heaven was working on your foundation before increasing your responsibility. Many people want increase. Few people want development. Many people want the reward. Few people want the process that creates the capacity to handle it. But capacity is everything. Imagine giving someone a large blessing before they are emotionally prepared to manage it. The blessing becomes pressure. The opportunity becomes stress. The increase becomes a burden. That is why heaven focuses on building the person before expanding the territory. And chosen one, that is exactly what has been happening with you. You have been developing strength. You have been developing wisdom. You have been developing discernment. You have been developing patience. These qualities may not feel exciting while they are forming, but they become priceless when the next season arrives. Michael says your future requires more than resources. It requires stability. Because stability is what allows abundance to remain. Anyone can receive something. Not everyone can sustain it. That is why your journey has looked different. You were being taught lessons that many people skip. Lessons about trust. Lessons about stewardship. Lessons about character. Lessons about purpose. And now those lessons are beginning to produce results. There is another reason the delay felt longer than expected. For years, you identified yourself through struggle. You never intended to. It happened gradually. The challenges became familiar. The pressure became normal. The responsibility became part of your identity. You became the reliable one, the dependable one, the person who always figured things out, the person who carried more than most people knew. And while those qualities are admirable, they also created a hidden belief. A belief that said your value came from how much you could endure. Michael says that belief must be released. Because your value was never connected to your suffering. Your worth was never measured by your struggle. Your importance was never determined by how much pressure you could survive. Those were seasons. They were not your identity. And now heaven is asking you to let go of identities that no longer belong in your future. The version of you that constantly expected disappointment. The version of you that assumed every opportunity would disappear. The version of you that prepared for the worst before believing for the best. Those versions served a purpose during difficult seasons. But they cannot lead you into the season that is coming. Because abundance requires a different mindset. Abundance requires expectation. Abundance requires openness. Abundance requires trust. Michael says something is already shifting within you. You may not have fully noticed it yet, but the evidence is there. The things that once excited you no longer have the same appeal. The constant hustle no longer feels fulfilling. The endless striving no longer feels necessary. You are beginning to crave something deeper. Peace, balance, purpose, freedom. That change is not accidental. It is a sign of transition. When heaven prepares someone for a new season, their desires begin to change before their circumstances do. The old season starts feeling too small. The old patterns start feeling uncomfortable. The old way of thinking begins to lose its power. That is exactly where many chosen ones become confused. Because externally, life may still look similar. But internally, everything is changing. Michael says pay attention to that internal shift. It matters more than you realize. Because the wealthy version of you is not defined by what is in your bank account. It is defined by how you think, how you respond, and how you carry yourself. True wealth begins long before money arrives. It begins when fear loses control. It begins when scarcity loses authority. It begins when you stop measuring your future through the limitations of your past. And chosen one, that process is already happening. You are becoming less attached to struggle, less attached to fear, less attached to old stories that no longer reflect who you are becoming. This is why Michael says the delay is ending. Not because heaven suddenly changed its mind, but because you have changed. You have grown. You have developed. You have become someone capable of carrying what once would have overwhelmed you. And in the next part, Michael reveals the hidden mindset that keeps many chosen ones trapped in survival mode, and the powerful shift that allows them to step into true stewardship and lasting abundance. Chosen one, Archangel Michael says there is one barrier that quietly keeps many people from stepping into the abundance prepared for them. It is not a lack of intelligence. It is not a lack of opportunity. It is not even a lack of faith. It is a mindset that was created during seasons of survival. And the difficult part is that most people do not even realize they are carrying it. Survival mode is not something you choose consciously. It develops when life repeatedly teaches you that you must always be ready for the next problem. It develops when every breakthrough seems temporary, when every victory is followed by another challenge, when every moment of relief feels short-lived. Over time, your mind adapts. It begins expecting difficulty. It begins preparing for disappointment. It begins scanning for danger even when danger is no longer present. Michael says this is what many chosen ones have been carrying. You learn how to survive. You learn how to push through. You learn how to stay strong when nobody else understood what you were facing. And those skills helped you. They protected you. They carried you through seasons that could have broken you. But what protects you in one season can limit you in another. Because survival mode was never meant to become your permanent identity. Think about it. How many times have you worried about something before it even happened? How many times have you expected the worst while secretly hoping for the best? How many times have you received good news and immediately wondered what problem would come next? Michael says these patterns are not signs of weakness. They are signs of conditioning. They are evidence that your mind became trained by difficult seasons. But now heaven is calling you into a different way of living. Because abundance cannot fully flourish where fear remains in control. Fear always focuses on loss. Fear always expects limitation. Fear always assumes there will never be enough. And when fear becomes norm, even blessings can feel uncomfortable. That is why some people sabotage opportunities. That is why some people struggle to receive. That is why some people remain stuck even after doors begin opening. The opportunity is present, but the mindset remains trapped in the old season. Michael says this is where transformation begins. Not with money, not with circumstances, not with external change. Transformation begins when you stop identifying with the version of yourself that was created by survival. You are not the fear. You are not the struggle. You are not the scarcity. You are not the limitation. Those were experiences. They were not your identity. And there is freedom in understanding that. Because once you separate yourself from those old experiences, you become available for something greater. Michael wants you to imagine something. Imagine waking up every morning without immediately feeling pressure. Imagine making decisions from confidence instead of fear. Imagine expecting good things without feeling guilty about it. Imagine trusting that provision can flow into your life without constant struggle. For some people, that sounds normal. For others, it feels almost impossible. Why? Because survival mode taught them that peace must be earned, that rest must be justified, that ease is dangerous, that if they stop pushing, everything will fall apart. Michael says those beliefs are not truths. They are wounds disguised as wisdom. And heaven is healing those wounds right now. You may have noticed it recently. The constant grind no longer inspires you. The endless hustle no longer feels meaningful. The pressure to prove yourself is losing its grip. You are beginning to realize that your worth does not come from exhaustion. Your value does not come from sacrifice. Your identity does not come from struggle. This realization is powerful because many people spend their entire lives trying to earn what heaven already wanted to give them. They believe they must suffer long enough, work hard enough, prove themselves enough. Then perhaps they will deserve abundance. Michael says that belief creates unnecessary burdens. Abundance is not a prize for exhaustion. It is a responsibility entrusted to those who are ready to steward it. And stewardship requires something survival mode cannot provide. It requires vision. A survivor thinks about making it through today. A steward thinks about building tomorrow. A survivor focuses on avoiding loss. A steward focuses on creating impact. A survivor reacts to circumstances. A steward creates direction. Do you see the difference? Michael says heaven is moving you from reaction to direction, from fear to trust, from scarcity to stewardship. This transition may feel uncomfortable at first, because every major transformation requires leaving something familiar behind. Even if that familiar thing was limiting you, many chosen ones unknowingly remain attached to old struggles because those struggles became familiar. They know how to survive. They know how to endure. They know how to carry burdens. But receiving, resting, trusting, those things feel unfamiliar. And unfamiliar things often feel risky. Yet Michael says your next season requires exactly that. It requires you to trust more than you fear. It requires you to expect more than you doubt. It requires you to believe that your future does not have to repeat your past. There is another truth Michael wants you to hear. The wealthy version of you is not obsessed with money. The wealthy version of you is obsessed with peace. Because true abundance is not measured by possessions. It is measured by freedom. Freedom from constant anxiety. Freedom from endless worry. Freedom from the belief that everything depends entirely on your own effort. For years you have carried responsibilities that shaped your character. Now heaven is preparing to show you that responsibility and peace can exist together. Strength and rest can exist together. Purpose and abundance can exist together. You do not have to choose one or the other. Michael says the season ahead is teaching you how to hold both. And that lesson is more valuable than many people realize. Because when abundance finally arrives, it will not simply reveal what you have. It will reveal who you have become. And who you are becoming is someone very different from the person who first started this journey. You are becoming calmer, more grounded, more focused, more aligned, more capable of carrying increase without being controlled by it. That transformation is the real breakthrough. The external evidence will follow, but the internal shift comes first. And in the next part, Archangel Michael reveals the powerful sign that your wealthy self is already beginning to emerge, and why many chosen ones overlook it when it first appears. Chosen one. Archangel Michael says there is a sign that appears before a major season of increase begins. Most people expect this sign to be obvious. They expect a sudden opportunity, a dramatic breakthrough, a life-changing event. But Michael says the first sign is usually much quieter. It begins within you. Before your circumstances change, your identity starts changing. Before abundance appears around you, a new level of clarity begins appearing within you. And many chosen ones overlook this because they are still watching their circumstances instead of paying attention to themselves. Michael says think about how different you feel compared to a few years ago. Not necessarily richer, not necessarily more successful, but different. Your priorities have shifted. Your perspective has matured. Your understanding of life has deepened. Things that once seemed important no longer carry the same weight. The approval of others matters less. The need to prove yourself feels weaker. The desire to compete is fading. And in its place, something new is emerging. A desire for peace. A desire for stability. A desire for purpose. A desire for a life that feels aligned rather than impressive. Michael says this is not a coincidence. It is evidence of growth. Because true abundance is never built on ego. It is built on alignment. And alignment changes what you value. There was a time when you thought success would finally make you feel complete. Now you understand that completeness must come first. There was a time when you believed more money would automatically create happiness. Now you recognize that peace cannot be purchased. There was a time when you chased opportunities simply because they looked good. Now you are learning to choose opportunities that actually fit your purpose. That shift is significant. In fact, Michael says it is one of the clearest signs that your wealthy self is already emerging. Because abundance is attracted to clarity. Confusion scatters energy. Fear adds focus. But clarity creates direction. And direction creates momentum. For years, you may have felt pulled in many different directions. Trying to satisfy everyone. Trying to meet every expectation. Trying to carry every responsibility. Trying to avoid disappointing anyone. Eventually, that became exhausting. Not because you were weak, but because you were carrying things that were never assigned to you. Michael says one of the signs of maturity is learning what belongs to you and what is not. Not every burden is yours. Not every problem is yours. Not every expectation deserves your energy. And as you release what was never yours to carry, something powerful begins happening. You create space. Space for vision. Space for creativity. Space for opportunities. Space for abundance. Many people ask heaven for increase while their lives remain crowded with unnecessary weight. Michael says increase often begins when release happens first. Release of fear. Release of guilt. Release of old identities. Release of expectations that no longer fit your future. You are beginning to understand this. That is why certain relationships feel different. That is why certain conversations feel different. That is why certain environments no longer feel comfortable. You are not becoming disconnected. You are becoming aligned. And alignment changes everything. There is another sign Michael wants to reveal. You are beginning to trust yourself more. Not in an arrogant way, not in a prideful way, but in a healthy way. You are learning to listen to your discernment. Learning to honor your intuition. Learning to recognize when something feels right and when something feels wrong. This is important because abundance requires decision-making. And decision-making requires confidence. For too long, you doubted yourself. You second-guessed your instincts. You questioned your judgment. You waited for everyone else's approval before trusting your own direction. But Michael says that season is ending. Because the future ahead of you requires confidence. Not confidence rooted in ego. Confidence rooted in alignment. The confidence that comes from knowing who you are. Knowing your values. Knowing your purpose. Knowing your direction. That confidence becomes a foundation. And foundations matter. Because abundance built on a weak foundation eventually collapses. But abundance built on a strong foundation becomes sustainable. Michael says something else is changing inside you. You are becoming less reactive. Situations that once triggered fear now trigger reflection. Challenges that once created panic now create strategy. Delays that once felt unbearable now feel temporary. Why? Because wisdom is increasing. And wisdom is one of the greatest forms of wealth. Many people think wealth begins in a bank account. Michael says wealth begins in the mind. A wealthy mind sees possibilities. A wealthy mind sees opportunities. A wealthy mind remains calm when others become fearful. A wealthy mind understands that temporary circumstances do not determine permanent outcomes. And chosen one, that mindset is forming within you right now. Little by little, day by day, moment by moment. You may not see the full transformation yet, but heaven sees it. Michael sees it. And deep down, part of you sees it too. That is why the old life feels uncomfortable. That is why old patterns are losing their grip. That is why you can no longer settle for the version of yourself that existed before. You are growing beyond it. You are expanding beyond it. You are becoming more than it. And growth always creates tension before it creates results. Do not mistake that tension for failure. Do not mistake that discomfort for confusion. Do not mistake that transition for weakness. It is evidence that something is changing. Something is emerging. Something is preparing to be revealed. The wealthy version of you is not arriving from somewhere else. It is emerging from within. And Michael says the final stage of this transformation is closer than you realize. Because in the next part, he reveals the one decision that separates those who remain trapped in old cycles from those who fully step into the abundant future prepared for them. Chosen one, Archangel Michael says there comes a moment in every person's journey when they must make a decision. Not a decision about money. Not a decision about opportunities. Not a decision about circumstances. A decision about identity. Because every future begins with identity. And every breakthrough begins with a choice. The choice to stop seeing yourself through the lens of your past. For years, you have carried stories about who you are. Stories created by disappointment. Stories created by delay. Stories created by struggle. Stories created by seasons that tested your strength. Some of those stories protected you. Some of those stories helped you survive. But Michael says many of those stories can no longer guide your future. Because the person you were is not the person you are becoming. Think about it. How many times have you introduced yourself to yourself through old pain? How many times have you remembered every failure while forgetting every victory? How many times have you focused on what went wrong instead of recognizing how far you've already come? Michael says the final step toward abundance is learning to see yourself correctly. Not as someone trying to become worthy, but as someone who already carries value. Not as someone chasing a future, but as someone preparing to receive it. Not as someone defined by limitation, but as someone designed for purpose. There is a reason this message found you today. Out of all the videos you could have watched, out of all the messages you could have ignored, you are here. And Michael says that is not meaningless. Because something inside you recognized these words. Not necessarily because they were new, but because they confirmed something you already felt. A quiet knowing, a deep awareness, a sense that your life was always meant for more than survival. For years you have carried responsibilities. You have carried expectations. You have carried burdens that many people never saw. And while others only SE'd your strength, heaven witnessed every moment when you felt tired. Every moment when you doubted. Every moment when you wondered whether things would ever change. Michael says heaven saw it all. Nothing was missed. Nothing was ignored. Nothing was forgotten. And now you are entering a season where your focus must shift. No longer looking backward. No longer measuring your future through old limitations. No longer allowing yesterday's fears to define tomorrow's possibilities. Because abundance requires vision. And vision always looks forward. The wealthy version of you does not constantly replay old disappointments. The wealthy version of you learns from them and moves forward. The wealthy version of you does not live in fear of loss. The wealthy version of you lives in expectation of purpose. The wealthy version of you does not spend every day trying to prove something. The wealthy version of you understands their value and acts from that understanding. That is the shift. That is the transformation. That is the moment Michael has been preparing you for throughout this entire message. You are not waiting to become someone else. You are allowing the real version of yourself to emerge. A version that is calmer, stronger, wiser, more aligned, more confident, more prepared. A version that understands abundance is not just about finances. It is about peace. It is about purpose. It is about freedom. It is about living without constantly carrying the weight of fear. Michael says your next chapter will not be built on force. It will be built on alignment. You do not need to chase every opportunity. You do not need to prove yourself to everyone. You do not need to exhaust yourself trying to control every outcome. You only need to remain aligned with who you are becoming. Because what belongs to you will not require you to betray your purpose. What belongs to you will not require you to abandon your values. What belongs to you will not require you to live in constant anxiety. When the right season arrives, things begin to flow differently. Doors open differently. Opportunities appear differently. Connections form differently. And you begin recognizing that heaven was working long before you could see the evidence. Chosen one, before this message ends, Archangel Michael wants you to remember one thing. Your wealthy self is not a distant dream. Your wealthy self is emerging right now. Every lesson, every challenge, every delay, every season of growth has been preparing you for this moment. Trust the process. Trust the timing. Trust the transformation happening within you. And most important, trust the purpose placed upon your life. Because the story is not ending here. In many ways, it is only beginning. If this message spoke to your spirit today, Take a moment right now and type these words in the comments. My wealthy self is emerging. I want to see how many chosen ones are stepping into this new season with faith and confidence. Also, don't forget to like this video as a sign that you agree with this message and want more people to receive it. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss future messages from Archangel Michael created to encourage, strengthen, and guide chosen ones on their journey. And finally, share this video with someone who has been feeling stuck, delayed, or discouraged. You never know whose breakthrough could begin with a message they almost missed. May peace guide your steps. May wisdom direct your decisions. May abundance find its rightful place in your life. And may Archangel Michael's message continue to remind you that your best chapter is still ahead. Stay blessed, chosen one. Until next time.